And hello again, and here we are back in my garage. In fact, at the very back of my garage, next to my toolboxes. And there's a good reason for that, because this video is the first of a series of short videos I want to make about building up a decent toolkit at home for working on your bike. That said, I'm only going to concentrate on bikes from Japan and Europe. So if you've got an old Harley or an old British bike, you'll need a whole new set of tools in imperial sizes. And we're not going to cover that, because most folks, if you're working on old Harleys already or are restoring an old British bike, you've probably got a decent toolkit already. So I'm really concentrating on people who are just starting out and want to build up a decent kit and not buy rubbish that'll break the first time you use it. So that said then, what have I got? What have I got in my toolboxes? In fact, I've got some more down there, and I've got some more tools underneath my workbench as well. Don't look too closely because they're not particularly very neat. I'm not a very neat person, so things go wherever they go. But on top here, I've got various sockets, usually 1/2 inch drive because they take up a lot of room. Bits and bobs over here. These are actually torque wrenches of different sizes. Yeah, so that's sort of the big size sockets. In here, this drawer, I've got my metric spanners and a few sockets as well, small sockets. This one's imperial spanners, ditto. Down this big drawer here, this is full of hammers, various kinds of hammers. Up here I've got all kinds of bits and bobs, brushes and God knows what else. Up here I've got all my screwdrivers, various kinds, pliers, various kinds, lots of different pliers. You always need loads of pliers. In here I've got just hacksaws and cutting implements, a few files and that sort of thing. And what else we got in here? Oh yeah, here I've got my big spanners. You know, these are sort of a big size that don't fit in here. I've got both metric and imperial, and even some Whitworth, I think, which somebody gave me many years ago, because they didn't need them anymore, so I never used them, but you never know when they might come in handy. In here I've got some cutting pieces, things like taps and dies, that sort of thing. And then down here I've got electrical components, more electrical components, wires and so on, more electrical components. And then down here, which you probably can't see, I've got some measuring things, lots of T-squares, rulers, yeah, different things, various kinds of vernier caliper, that sort of thing for measuring stuff. Then I've got clamps, which I've got loads of clamps, God knows why. I've got stacks of clamps for various things, bearings, that sort of thing. And at the bottom here I've got things like cutting discs, you know, things for your angle grinder, stuff like that, bits and bobs really. And I've also got some more stuff underneath there. So I have got quite a lot, and I always need more. You can always do with more tools. If you get into working on bikes and cars, you always need more tools, believe me. So where shall we start then? Well, I think we'll start with spanners, because that's usually where folks start off. You know, you need some spanners. So what sizes should you buy, and what sizes should you not buy, and what brands should you try and avoid, and what are the decent brands to use at home which don't cost an absolute fortune. Things like Snap-on, don't buy them, because you're looking at paying £100 for one spanner, which most folks don't want to do. So I'll now get all the most common sizes you'll need for working on your bike, and we'll lay them out and go through those sizes. And so here we have the most common sizes of spanner you'll need to use at home when working on your bike. And these few spanners will probably cover 95% of all the fasteners you'll find on a typical Japanese or Italian bike. So what do we have? Well, we start off at the smallest at 8mm. Then we go to 10, 12, 13, 14, 17 and 19. I'll say that again. 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 17 and 19. And that should cover you for the vast majority of fasteners you'll find on your bike. And so they're the most common sizes and type you need to buy for your home toolkit. But what about brands? What about what brand to buy? Well, what I would say is keep away from the top end, the absolute top end of Snap-on, for example, because you can be paying £100 for one spanner, and most folks can't afford that. I certainly don't want to pay that kind of money. I'd also say keep away from the very cheap stuff, the cheap Chinese stuff that have been imported, unbranded. I would also add, unfortunately, there are some old British brands, things like Sealy and Draper, which used to be good quality British made tools. and those brand names have been sold off, and now they're just importing Chinese stuff and stamping on Draper and Sealy onto those cheap tools and trying to flog them off to the gullible public. So I would say keep away from new modern Draper and Sealy tools. So the tools that I would recommend, that I know of anyway, I can think of 3 different brands in the mid-range. Towards the top of the mid-range, you've got what I've got here, the German company Starvili. Good make, good brand, no complaints at all. Kind of equal to Starvili is a French company, Facom. Not the other way around, but Facom, F-A-C-O-M, and these spanners here are made by Facom. And they're the sort of same price as the West German, the German Starvili brand. I say West German because I bought these so long ago. It was West Germany. It wasn't called Germany. It was called West Germany. And the only reason actually I bought these was because back in the day when I started my first decently paid job, when I got my first wage packet, I trotted off to the local tool shop, and they happened to sell Starvili, and so that's what they recommended. So I bought myself my first ever 2 or 3 spanners. A month later, I went back, a bit more money in my pocket, and bought 2 or 3 more. A month later, 2 or 3 more. Then I bought sockets and so on, and that's how I went on for nearly 2 years that I worked in that job, and I built up a decent toolkit that I can use on my bike. Since then, of course, I've carried on buying things. I've got all kinds of different makes, and yeah, but I've been very happy with these. These are actually more than 40 years old now, because I'm getting quite old. Never broken, never gone rusty, always fantastic tools. Never had a problem with them, so I do recommend them. But if they're a little bit over your budget, a little bit cheaper but still fantastic value and good quality, is the brand Teng, T-E-N-G, and they're made in Taiwan, not in China, in Taiwan, and that's an important difference. And I have been given a socket set made by Teng, and I thought, oh whatever, but I've started using it, and it's a fantastic socket set. It's a 3/8 drive, which is the most useful size when you're working on motorbikes, and I use it all the time, and I just wish I bought something like that many years ago. But we'll come to sockets and socket sets later on in this series. So yeah, Teng, Starvili and Facom. If anybody's watching this who's got experience of similarly priced tools that I'm not aware of, then put those in the comments below. If you can recommend a certain brand, then sure enough, put it in the comments, and I'm sure somebody out there who's just starting off might find that very helpful. By the way, I've also got here some spanners that I've not mentioned yet, because these are kind of not really your basics. These are nice to have. So you don't need to have them, but they are very nice to have when you got them. And that's because these are ratchet spanners, because in the ring end they've got a ratchet. So if I can just do that, you hear that? Got a lever there that you can turn and go anti-clockwise or clockwise, and these speed up things an awful lot. If, for example, you're undoing a cam cover and it's got 20 bolts all the same blooming size, these speed up things an awful lot. If you can't get a socket on there, a socket and driver, you use this and it just whizzes them off like nobody's business, much quicker than using an old-fashioned standard spanner. But of course they are more expensive. These are Facom, as I say, and they're typically between, I don't know, about 15 to 25, 30 pounds each, depending on size, because obviously the bigger they are, the more they cost. But I've bought just the sizes that I use a lot, i.e. 10, 12, 13, 14 and 17 and 19 millimeters. I'll stop there because after that you very rarely use those sizes. So yeah, and so there are some of the good mid-range brands I would recommend you look at. I would also say don't buy a full set of spanners in a case that goes from sort of 4 millimeters all the way up to 30 millimeters, and it's got 50 different spanners on it, because chances are half of spanners you will never ever use, and the second chance is those spanners are very poor quality. If they can cram in, you know, 30 or 40 spanners in a tool kit and it only costs 50 quid, it's going to be pretty rubbish. So I would say don't buy a whole set of spanners which covers every single size. Instead, just buy the sizes you need, like I have done here. And if in the future you find you need a bigger spanner to do some specific job on your bike, maybe you'll need something, I don't know, a 24mm spanner to undo an axle nut. Well, go and buy one then. Don't buy it before you need it, because they're quite bloody expensive. Just buy it as you need it, then you can put it in your toolbox and you've got it for future use. And that's what I've done, and over the years, you know, it just builds up and builds up. You never seem to have enough tools. So there you are. That's my quick introduction to buying and building up a decent set of spanners for your home toolkit when working on a bike. So this is part one of a series of videos I want to make about tools. So we'll also cover things like sockets and drivers, screwdrivers, pliers, Allen keys, you know, all kinds of things I can think of that I use regularly and I think your typical home mechanic needs to have in their toolbox. So that's it for now. Any comments, any suggestions, any ideas, then please put them in the comments below. And so that's it for now. And so thanks for watching and cheers.